No one had ever really studied an African animal in the wild, or pretty well any animal in the wild. So I was sort of breaking ground without realizing it.
In September of 1956, when Anne started her research on giraffes in South Africa, one of the questions she wondered was, what do giraffes eat? And to answer that question, what she did was not only watch what they ate, she also collected samples from the plants that they were eating, as well as the ones that were not eating.
There were no books on how to study the behavior of an animal. So I just thought whenever they were eating at a certain tree, when they wandered on, I'd get out of the car and took the samples of these leaves up to Pretoria. And a woman who studied plants was able to tell me which ones they were. So I had a list finally of trees that giraffe like to browse on. That's how you build up how an animal lives.
And she found that they ate 32 species of plants. When we looked over our data from 40 years of the thorn-cross giraffe in Zambia, we found that they ate over 100 species of plants. So giraffes eat a lot of plants, but it turns out that most of the plants they eat are limited. So about 95% of their diet are leaves, stems, and flowers of about a half a dozen species. In fact, during their lifetime, a giraffe might only eat 15 species. So what actually are they eating and what determines their diet? 4 things: where they live, what season it is, their sex, and their age. So I'll go through those 4. Where they live. So in some places, they don't have the same species as other places, and so they can't eat the same thing. But what also happens is some places have the same species, but they still differ in the diet. So as an example, the Maasai giraffe in Serengeti National Park, they feed on the white berry bush less than 1% of the time, while the thorn-cross giraffe in Zambia eat it about 6% of the time. Take another example, which is season. In Africa, there's a dry season and a wet season, not 4 seasons like the Northern Hemisphere. In Zambia, the thorn-cross giraffe feed on the sausage tree, which got its name because of the sausage fruit, which can weigh up to 50 pounds, but in this example that we have, it only weighed about 30 pounds. Anyway, they feed on it about 14% of the time in the dry season. It's a real luscious green leaf, but only about 4% during the wet season. What about sex of giraffes? How do male and females differ? In this case, I'll go back to Anne's work. She didn't study the sex differences, but in her notebook, when she taped the leaves and stems of the species that the giraffe were eating or not eating, one of the ones in her notebook is called Trachelia emetica, or the mahogany. And she found they didn't eat that at all. It turned out in Zambia, it composed 9% of the diet of the males and 4% of the diet of females. So now we're down to age. Well, juveniles are smaller than adults and they eat differently. And this is another case where Anne found that the giraffe in South Africa were eating what was called the bush willow, which is a species that they also eat in Zambia. Now, she didn't look at whether the juveniles or the adults were eating more or less, but it's the same species in the 2 places, and the giraffe in both places eat them. Juveniles ate it for about 8% of the time, and the adults ate it for about 6% of the time. So what does determine diet? In giraffe are where they live, what they like, what season it is, their sex, and their age, and all of those factors also influence what we eat.